But the thing is, travel isn't a substitute for substance. And the only truth isn't given or found externally. All of that is revealed in the one place that nobody wants to travel to, which is inside yourself. Better than food, man. Well, it's been building up inside of me for I don't know how long. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. It's beach season here. Great to see you as always. Get that coffee. Lukewarm, delicious. Anyways, since it is snowbird season down here in Florida, I decided to review something that everybody could take to the beach. So today is The Beach by the British author Alex Garland, published in 1996. All right, yeah, a Gen X novel, a Generation X novel. Generation X was better than mine. No offense, y'all. I prefer them. They knew how to do things. Mine is virtually useless, and Z is completely lost. Anyways, today's novel poses you, the reader, the question, how far would you go to protect heaven if you found it? To what depths would you descend as a human being, to base animal, in order to keep your beautiful home, your beautiful paradise from collapsing? Who is it that said I arrived at who or what I am by imperceptible degrees of change, or something like that? Paraphrasing, I think it was Lichtenberg, but I can't quite remember. But that's what this book is about, though. The descent of a person into the realm of insanity or madness or just deep internal darkness, whatever you want to call it. Something actually normally found in war. How people arrive, how groups arrive at the level of the beasts they are through imperceptible degrees of change. Fun, but really quick, today's video is sponsored by the Ridge Wallet. My friend, are you tired of carrying a wrinkled piece of dead cattle skin warping your spine out of alignment? I was too. Introducing the solution to your problem, the Ridge Wallet. These things are awesome. They go into your side pocket or your front pocket, not your back pocket. Sitting on them will not break them. It will just not feel good at all. So please don't do it. Please put them in your front or side pocket. Thank you. These things are awesome. They are light, sleek, industrial, beautiful little pieces of minimalist modular design. And look, it even comes in this neon tiki model. Very good for beach season. But of course, if you'd prefer something else, they have over 30 colors and styles to choose from. Very easy to use, holds up to 12 cards plus room for cash on the back. This one has a cash strap. It also comes with a cash clip that you can switch out with it. It's pretty cool. The durable material means that each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. You can buy this one wallet and carry it for life. You can take it all over the world on all your various trips and adventures. In fact, the Rich team is so confident you'll like it, they'll let you test drive it for 45 days. You can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. That's a great policy. And if that hasn't convinced you yet, check out their 40,000 5-star reviews. Get 10% off your order today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/betterthanfood and using the discount code betterthanfood. The link is below. Thanks a bunch. The Beach was written by the author and now film director Alex Garland when he was 24. Made a big splash. It was published in 1996 and became very popular after being turned into a film by Danny Boyle starring DiCaprio in the lead, and I think Tilda Swinton is in it as well. I wanted to see it when I was a kid, but I never did for some reason. Don't know why. No good reason. I just have a crystal clear memory of Moby's Porcelain playing in the trailer. It was a very distinct moment in the year 2000 when that film came out. And I think I was just starting to become sort of a conscious human being. So this is the story of Richard, a young guy in the 90s from London backpacking around Southeast Asia, specifically Thailand. Running from something, it seems, although we never find out what. So the first night he arrives in Bangkok, he stays in this cheap hostel. And the walls are like flimsy, and the tops of them are actually not connected to the ceiling. They just have mosquito nets, so you can hear everybody around you. And this completely daffy character arrives in the hostel late at night when everybody's trying to sleep. And he just starts yelling and hollering and just fucking with people, basically. And he starts smoking a joint because it's legal there. And that's a big deal considering pot in the 90s was basically considered like an abomination in the West. Very different here in America now that it's been legalized and everybody could basically care less. He's Scottish, so he speaks with this big, thick brogue, and he rips apart the mosquito net and addresses Richard down below, trying to sleep in the middle of the night, like an apparition. He's like, hey, you want some of this? He's basically like, leave me alone. And Daffy's like, no, I'm not gonna fucking leave you alone. Appropriately, he goes by the name Daffy Duck, as it turns out, and henceforth remains so throughout the novel. Okay, so next morning, something quite interesting happens after this exchange. Daffy slits his wrists and commits suicide. Small spoiler. And Richard discovers him. Blood everywhere, all over the walls, it's like arterial spray, anyways. But tacked onto Richard's door is a note from Daffy. And it's not a suicide note. It's a map. And it clearly identifies this certain beach that the previous evening Daffy was ranting and raving about. A place of isolated perfection. Untouched. pristine, away from the trampled paths of shitty Western tourists. Pure. Perfect. You see, he came back into the hostel in the middle of the night, he's saying, bitch! The fucking bitch! And he thought he was saying bitch. His accent's so strong, Richard thinks he's saying bitch, but he's actually saying beach. He's referring to this beach. And he starts telling Richard about it. Well, unfazed by the suicide, which we'll discover later is actually kind of just characteristic of Richard, Richard decides to travel to this beach with a couple of companions from the hostel, his neighbors, so to speak, a French couple named Etienne and Françoise. He has a crush very quickly on Françoise, this young French girl. And so they join forces and go off to seek an adventure. And an adventure they find, as well as hell on earth, in this isolated community out in this Thai beach, in the middle of nowhere, completely inaccessible to all other tourists. I was gonna say that Daffy Duck, this guy in the novel, totally was a serious Robert Carlyle character, you know, Begbie from Trainspotting. And sure the fuck enough, I look at the credits in the trailer, it's Robert Carlyle. Of course, it's Danny Boyle who did Trainspotting, which is what Begbie was in. That's who played him in the film adaptation. Fuck me. Music by Angela Badalamenti. Did not know that. That's curious. I'm gonna watch this movie. So Richard has this whole like Vietnam thing, right? He's got this, you know, 90s, you know, he's got this whole like Vietnam fantasy, Vietnam War, apocalypse now, that whole thing, you know, like being, you know, in the jungle, drugs, guns, jungle, Doris soundtrack, etc. What I appreciated about the book was the idea that the traveler is searching for something meaningful and only ends up finding other people in just as meaningless positions as the previous ones encountered. In the search for authenticity or something that is truly novel, that's external to us, we end up with various permutations of the same shit. Variations on a theme. Echoes of something that once had substance but is now dull, routine behavior. You think about Anthony Bourdain when you think about that, right? And you can understand perhaps a little better why he killed himself. That's a dark theory, of course, but it's just my theory. But the thing is, travel isn't a substitute for substance. And the only truth isn't given or found externally. All of that is revealed in the one place that nobody wants to travel to, which is inside yourself. Because it's a very, very dark, uncomfortable place. Now, I will grant you that what travel does do is it kind of like disorients your senses so they're working in a different manner, and you can make some very valuable observations in that state. Travel does do that. But it's all internal, I would argue. You know, it doesn't really matter where you're at. But placing yourself in a different location can kind of jostle you up, so to speak, and kind of push reset, forcefully so. And it can be really uncomfortable. But it can be really, really insightful and valuable, I would argue. So what they discover is a kind of tribe, right? This, you know, of Westerners. They're hippies. Or it started that way. Then it developed into a community, you know, 30 or 35 people, something like that. Not huge. They fish and work every day, they hang out, you know, they smoke a lot of pot because there's pot grown on the island, which is protected by Thai guards with guns. And that was an awkward revelation when they crash land on the beach. But, you know, they have their separate parts of the island, right? There's the hippies over here, and then there's the pot-growing Thai drug lords over here. No big deal, or so it seems. They know of each other, but they leave each other alone, and everything's gravy. Yeah. They all live in like these makeshift houses, and they cook fish every day, they fish every day, they garden, they, you know, pal around, they play soccer, they live in this kind of isolated paradise which nobody wants to leave. It's kind of this place where time stands still and it's one long, endless summer, basically. It's kind of like Los Angeles. And it shifts your perspective a little bit, right? The number one priority for all the people here in this place is to take care of the beach, which means keeping it secret. Problem is, before they go, Richard copied the favor that Daffy did for him and drew a makeshift map for these other tourists from America. So now he has a problem, he realizes, because the secret's out. So things are awkward for Richard at first, but he eventually gets into the routine. Of course, these people weren't expecting him and the other two to show up, so it's a surprise and it's weird, but eventually they assimilate, and it's all fun and games. So of course, you know how the story goes. Everything's fine until it's not. Somebody fucks up, and then other things get fucked up, and then other things get fucked up, and then suddenly it's just an absolute catastrophic mess, naturally. Just imagine like the worst things that could happen on a vacation to an island in the middle of Thailand. Things go wrong. So the whole book kind of reminded me of The Sheltering Sky by Paul Bowles, wherein the protagonist actually, who you thought was the protagonist, actually dies in the middle of the book. Spoiler, from typhoid. That was Kit in the novel, I think. It was played by John Malkovich in the film. The book does make some attempts to kind of transcend its 90s college drama television series genre thing with some dark moments of visceral reality. But inevitably, it just gets sucked back into the banality and concerns of somebody in their early 20s, fitting in and awkward self-consciousness. But it's kind of weird. I mean, it's an odd book. For example, I mean, there's far less writing in there about sex than there is about video games and cigarettes, which was, for a Gen X novel, really bizarre to me. Like Bret Easton Ellis era, you know what I mean? Garland is also concerned with science fiction themes later displayed in the films that he made. You know, and you know of them, I'm sure. I didn't realize this was who it was, but yeah, he was the guy who directed Ex Machina, Annihilation, neither of which I've seen actually. I haven't seen any of his films, as a matter of fact. He also wrote the film 28 Days Later, which I did think was an absolute and complete masterpiece. Excellent writing, excellent directing. Again, Danny Boyle, phenomenal film. One of the greatest films I think I've ever seen. My favorite post-apocalyptic film, I think. Horror, apocalypse film, whatever. I really think they got that one right. I thought Brendan Gleeson did such a phenomenal job of them. I mean, Cillian Murphy's great too, but I mean, like, Brendan Gleeson fucking nailed it as the dad. Great. Great. It felt very real. Felt like a very, very painfully, tragically believable film. Loved it. Anyways, there's a question of the multiverse in this book. It's, you know, kind of like, they're stoned all the time in this novel, right? They're like looking at like phosphorescence in the water, totally high, and they're like, oh my God. There's a question of the multiverse in this book. You know, the idea that if the universe is infinite, there's all these permutations of the same reality with different events and outcomes. This is reflected on by Richard when he wishes he were getting laid by the French love interest Françoise. This doesn't go anywhere, by the way. Spoiler, sorry. I mean, that's one of the weirdest things about the book for me. For being written as such a badass in certain ways, in this department, he is absolutely incompetent. The character, that is. The character, Richard. I mean, he kills a shark, right? And he and, you know, it's this big deal in the camp. He was like everybody's eating this shark, and it's like he's telling the story of how he caught it. But I mean, just, yeah, there's no sexual drive in this guy, or barely. I mean, it's barely there. It was just weird to me. I don't know. It was like all these hippies on this island smoking pot all day and like doing nothing, like nobody's fucking. Like, I mean, I know I'm a perv, but I mean, like, what are you people going on vacation to do? You know, it's like, anyways, all of it is managed by this woman named Sal, the orchestrator of the structure of the camp, you know, the boss hippie, basically, the hippie in charge. And she actually turns out to be this very cold, calculating, borderline evil character. You know, people begin to display these tendencies there that are deeply disturbing to somebody back in the real world, because everybody on the beach, again, their number one priority is keeping the beach secret. And if you're gonna do that, you start to do some things that are kind of morally reprehensible. You know what I mean? So that's the path that Richard takes. Now, what is interesting in the book is that Etienne, the French fellow, remains pretty morally steadfast the entire time, not as affected by whatever this environment is. But Richard, we discover, was sort of like, he turns into an unreliable narrator, which is very interesting from a literary standpoint. He's actually a fairly blatant sadist. He's kind of creepy and manipulative, you know? He had that propensity from the beginning, we realize, and then he just keeps going in that direction. So, the plot thickens, right? So it's a story in part about the Western desire for an individual meaningful experience, right? For something off the beaten path to change you into somebody interesting or worth a damn. To be someone who knows more, who has substance, who's had a true blue real adventure. The ability to have a true adventure in the 90s was nearly lost, and now post-internet it is well, I'm going to declare it, completely and totally lost. Through travel, right? Through going somewhere interesting and new. Now, all travel is virtually meaningless. People go to exotic countries and locations to post pictures of themselves on the internet in those locations to play the role that they've constructed for themselves of their personal actor, their personal best self, whatever, in said exotic location doing whatever exotic thing. It's all bland, banal marketing. That's all travel is these days. I mean, truly. Like the myriad selfie tourists before them. And then when that's finished, on to the next exotic location to do the same thing, and it's just regurgitated and regurgitated. And that's what's referred to these days as well-traveled. When you could, frankly, learn more about yourself and humanity sitting in the waiting room at a DMV with no smartphone. A nightmare, granted, but same with the Michelin star restaurants and all that. The 3 Michelin star restaurants, people go and they pay $1,000 for a dinner for 2. And then the people are like there with their fucking phones. They're taking photos of the food, posting them wherever, instead of experiencing it. They want to play the role of the person who is experienced, not partake in the actual experience. That's the interesting part, not the experience itself. It's the same with reading the great boring classic novels. I'm guilty of that. We're all guilty of all of this, by the way, myself included. This is the state of the world. This is the state of culture. Everything is everybody wants to have done, not do, right? A great many of us. Not all of us, by any means. Some of us escape. Some of us escape the air-conditioned nightmare. But yeah, it's about trouble in paradise. When utopic idealism meets natural reality, what you get is disaster. Food poisoning, shark attacks, political social conflict, drug-growing Thai soldiers with guns, etc. Played out in this little domain, you know, the island, the beach, it's a microcosm of the trials and tribulations of culture the world over throughout history. It's chaos. Very similar to Lord of the Flies, of course, with a little nod to The Tenant by Roland Topper. That's when Daffy starts appearing, this hallucination, right, of the guy who killed himself in the beginning. He doesn't go away. He keeps staying with Richard throughout the entire thing. So I won't say any more about that, but it's compelling. It is a wonderful depiction of the consequences of groupthink. Again, by imperceptible degrees. You don't even know what's happening. You can't even watch yourself change. But while we're all susceptible to this to some degree, perhaps some people are more susceptible. With Richard, I enjoyed Garland's intentional build-up of character, in the end revealing that, in fact, you should not be trusting the protagonist. At first he does some things and you're like, yeah, chalk it up to youth and inexperience. He's clumsy, he's stoned, he's awkward, you know, he's self-conscious. But then he does some increasingly darker things and you're like, aha, nah, this dude is a fucking psychopath, man. I love that unreliable narrator stuff. It's the best part of the book, in my opinion. How you're kind of led on to think he's one thing when really he's, So Garland wrote this when he was 24. Quite young for a novel this good, this competent. It actually reminded me, the setup at some points reminded me a lot of the film by Gaspar Noé, Climax. If any of you saw that, about the dance troupe stuck in the isolated compound. They all... Anyways. It's okay film. It's not his best, for sure. This is after Rich does some really fucked up shit. With the intention of saving the beach and the community, but... you just can't really justify this one. I don't think most of us would be able to live with it for the rest of our lives, that's for sure. But Rich can. It had all gone wrong, or it had all gone right. I couldn't decide which. On the one hand, just like on the plateau, when it came down to it, I'd lost my nerve. I hadn't been alert but calm, I'd been alert but queasy. Right on the other hand, maybe that was how it should be. Right to panic on the plateau, right to feel sick when I heard the gunshots. I've read about it enough times, seen it in enough films. The first day on your first tour, you're supposed to lose your shit in a contact. Later, more experienced, jaded, you are caught unawares one day that death still has a capacity to appall you. It is something you dwell on, and through it, you gain strength. That is one thing that Alex has going for his book, and I think subsequently his other work as well, though I haven't seen or read it. I listened to this interview, and he was discussing the idea of death, and that is a strong theme in his work, I believe, or it seems a strong concern with him. So, I don't know. I might read some other stuff by him or watch Ex Machina or something, but was it better than food? Nah, no, not at all. It's bloated, there's a ton of wasted time. The editor in my mind says that 200 pages of this could easily have been chopped, easily. It's so fucking dialogue heavy, it's very 90s, but not in the good way. The hallucinogenic thing with Daffy felt fine for a while, but then it just seemed weak, didn't go anywhere. Spoiler, skip ahead 15 seconds if you don't want it. We never figure out why he kills himself. It could be strong if if we were led in several different directions, I suppose, but it just felt like lazy. Again, why there isn't more sex in the novel remains a mystery to me. Seems like a missed opportunity. The setup seemed primed for it, and the lack of it seemed bizarrely unrealistic to me. Like you're reading a book all about death by a virgin college student. It's really, really weird, actually. It's kind of alien. It's alluded to a little bit, but I mean like, but it's never really dealt with, oddly. It was the only part of the book that seemed to betray the author's age, right? I felt like there's like kind of like life essence that's sapped from the narrative by the lack of it. You know what I mean? Because it's like this paradisiacal, is that a fucking word? Like, you know, this island of everything you could possibly want, yet this kind of fundamental human drive for all the parties involved almost, save for the French couple, is completely absent. It's really weird. That part seems strangely juvenile because the rest of the book seemed so adult. I mean, he stumbles across multiple dead bodies randomly in the book. I mean, for whatever reason. It's bizarre, you know? And the climax, there's just like a shitload of violence. I mean, like a lot of really brutal stuff. Is it better than food? Meh. Skip it. So you should read it. Well, if you're a fan of, I mean, of course, Lord of the Flies, everybody says that. Aldous Huxley, I say that too, I think. And maybe if you're a fan of the science fiction of J.G. Ballard, which I believe that Garland has said he's read, I might check it out. I thought it was pretty lackluster up until near the end, and it seemed to just confused on where to go. But if you're into travel fiction, you know, like Paul Bowles, Joseph Conrad, and Heart of Darkness, and you're into the stories of the Vietnam War and drugs and Apocalypse Now and Anthony Bourdain, you might be into it. You know, if you're flying into Southeast Asia somewhere on a trip, then get it for the plane, you know? Sure, why not? Fuck it. Coffee time. For those of you who are new, thank you very much for stopping by and watching. I take all the names of the patrons on Patreon who have donated $5 or more per video to help support this show, and I place all their names in this mason jar, and whoever's name I pull out, they're sent a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly, and the coffee is delicious. Currently from Myanmar, one of my favorites. Real crowd pleaser. It's just smooth, great all around, you know, everyday cup. Nothing crazy, you know, like blueberries or weird fruit and shit. Yeah, it's just coffee. It's really great. Anyways, if you would like to help support the show and get in on that, you can go to patreon.com/books-are-better-than-food and donate $5 or more per video, and I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you very much. It keeps this whole thing going, and I hope you're enjoying it. If you donate just $1 more on Patreon, you'll get access to the Patron-Only Reviews, plus all these reviews ad-free, as well as the Discord channel and the Better Than Friday newsletter that I send out every Friday, which is just a list of 5 different things I'm interested in at any given time, like books in the pipeline or articles or memes or like, you know, changes week to week. If you think we have similar taste, I think you'll get a lot of value out of that. Cool, thanks a bunch. Thank you very much to all the patrons, and best of luck. Okay, here we go. Yeah! Eric V. Thanks a bunch, Eric V. Really appreciate it. You're going to receive The Beach by Alex Garland, plus a bag of delicious coffee, and I hope you love both. Thank you very much for your support. Cheers. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this. And always remember, bring a book wherever you go, especially to an island in the middle of nowhere in Thailand with a whole bunch of hippies smoking way too much weed and not having any sex. You're definitely gonna want a book. Oh my God. That's hell on earth. Anyways, all right, take care of yourselves. Great to see you as always. Have a good night. Talk to you soon. Ciao.